Afternoon's presentation are all going to be in English. And without further ado, let's start with our first presentation. Professor Lili Diaz-Kommonen from Aalto University Media Lab is going to talk about designing digital tools for a sustainable semiosphere. Is it on?
I think now it is. Yes, now it is. Thank you. Right. Well, thank you for the organizers for inviting me to do this presentation here, and thank you to the audience as well. So in my presentation today, what's happening is that first, well, actually as part of the whole event, I'm going to present the theoretical framework that we are developing collaboratively. That's myself and with Heather Richards-Risetto of University of Nebraska, Lincoln, and Judith van der Elst, who's an independent researcher from Netherlands and now residing in Italy. And as I present this, I will also be showing works to illustrate, with the exception of the plant communication video. The other work, videos presented is my work done with my colleagues in the Systems of Representation Research Group at Aalto University. And well, in the presentation, I will address two issues unique to human science systems within the framework of biosemiotics. Number one, the diversity within the human species in multimodal communication. And two, the rapid development of technologically generated signals and how these are impacting the semiosphere. The perspective that we seek to develop is that different knowledge systems are critical to developing a sustainable semiosphere for the future. The work is grounded in research indicating that human knowledge is the result of sensory motor processes and cognitive processes, deviating in this manner from a more traditional view of modern science. Knowledge can therefore no longer be exclusively considered as a modal and propositional, but is rooted in embodied learning, whereby a myriad of sense stimuli can underpin cultural specific ontologies in different multimodal configurations. And our interest is in designing and developing different digital instruments that can facilitate, is this? Still, yes, here. That can facilitate knowledge building and exchange towards what we think of as sustainable semiosphere. So the next slide, please. And sustainable semiosphere. The term semiosphere itself is not clearly defined yet. And by no means is our contribution the only one. A lot of people are working on this, as I'm sure you know. We follow the idea that the semiosphere is in place when two or more Umwelten interact and is not limited to cultural science, but includes communicative action across the organismic world. An Umwelt is roughly an organism's model of the world and can include many signs a specific organism perceives to make sense of their surrounding. This signal space is complex. The question is then, in this semiosphere, when, for instance, the human Umwelt interacts with the signal space of other creatures, such as plants or birds, how do our technologies interfere with this space? Is it possible, when we understand the semiosphere, to create technologies of empathy that blend within this total signal space? Our idea definitely then is that human technology operates within this total sphere and is not separate from it. And I would like to play the first video. And here, this is a very simplistic organization that provides visualization that provides a basic example of communicative action across organismic world.
The smell of freshly cut grass brings to mind summer vacation and picnics in the park. pleasant associations, at least for us. For plants, that same scent is a harbinger of serious danger. When a plant is injured, say by the spinning blades of a lawnmower or a very hungry caterpillar, pungent chemicals pour out of the wounds, waft into the air, and stick in our noses, and also to the leaves and stems of nearby plants. Over many generations, eavesdropping plants have evolved to interpret each different combination of compounds as the signature of a specific imminent threat. The scent that corresponds to caterpillar, for example, prompts plants like tomato and tobacco to churn out bitter toxins in their leaves, making them yucky. Plants can actively communicate too. Some, like corn and cotton, can summon other animals as defenders. They emit bouquets of chemical compounds that attract parasitic wasps, which inject their eggs into the nutritiously plump caterpillars so the larvae can eat them from the inside out. Teamwork! Plants gossip below ground as well. If you seal the tops of tomato plants in airtight plastic bags and expose one of them to a harmful leaf disease, the healthy plants will detect their neighbor's illness and begin making antibiotic compounds. We don't know exactly how this communication happens, but it's probably through the extensive network of beneficial fungi that help plant roots absorb and share water and nutrients. However, plants can also use what they learn about their neighbors for nefarious purposes. Parasitic daughter vines sniff out and steer towards their preferred hosts instead of flailing around blindly. Another vine somehow grows leaves of different shapes and sizes to match those of the tree or shrub it's climbing on, using its host for both support and camouflage. Whatever the purpose, self-defense, parasitism, or mimicry, plants have been chatting and eavesdropping in complex social networks since long before Facebook, texting, or even... If anything, we took a leaf from their book.
Right, I hope that you were able to abstract some kind of understanding from those conflicting modalities there. At least from up here, it sounded like the video and the sound weren't in sync there. But the idea here is that, for us to start looking at, something like plants that is a being that is stationary and that somehow seems to us like it doesn't do anything, that there's active communication happening at a biological level, and that is very different, from us. And just because we don't directly have access to it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. So then, the next. So we seek to design, research, and develop new media tools that enable open interpretation approaches that support diversity and, more importantly, facilitate critical intervention and decision-making by the human agent. This is of particular relevance to ambient and ubiquitous computing environments where advanced information processing tools often operate in the background and beyond the awareness of the human. There is diversity within human species and in their multimodal communications. A theory of multimodality would seek to understand the affordances of the different modes and modal ensembles for meaning-making and knowledge production, and to provide a framework within which this information and knowledge could be evaluated, with a specific focus on cross-cultural differences. For instance, what is covered semiotically by language differs from one language to another, and from culture to culture. And language is but one mode of making meaning, and certain domains are considered beyond the reach of language. Moreover, representations of meaning differ among cultures. So if we could briefly then show the next slide, the next video. No, we have a video, video too, yeah, please. And this video here, what I would like to show is it's an installation with a dual-sided, approachable, and responsive screen. The more people that get close to it, the louder the sound becomes. And the idea here that this is work that was done by the students at Media Lab for the Mapping Modernism exhibition at Design Museum. They really wanted to play with the idea of rupturing the screen of cinema. So here is, I would say, a communication from an art perspective about what film is not. Not all knowledge also is accessed directly. So we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. It could be argued that such a difference is partly depicted in different interactions shown in the map of Mexico. Next slide, please. 1550. This is a work that has been going on for already, we started 1998 collaboration with the University of Uppsala. And then lately what we have done is we have revamped the platform. And here what I wanted to show with this is, for example, how information devices such as the abundant pictograms that populate the map operate in different cognitive and sensory levels. They're not just cute pictures on a surface. The walking depicted by the different figures might be regarded as instances of perambulation. Perambulation is a verb used to describe traveling or transversing of a space on foot, often with the objective of determining, comprehending its extents or boundaries. In this type of navigation, it is the human bodily presence that defines space and not the other way around. So again, this is an idea of like how knowledge is gained through experiential acting and activity that involves the whole body. If we could have the next slide. So we have updated this platform, the image annotation notebook tool is called, which now we use it for several projects. The tool allows for easy navigation of gigapixel images. It could be argued that annotation tools such as Imanote support the quest for knowledge by enabling understanding. By digging deeper and deeper into the image, a silent inner dialogue ensues. As we go closer into the details, an automatic process of remediation and recontextualization is triggered. One can link the image to other images, as is the case, in this is the Madonna painting by Axel Gallen-Kallela, where the sewing machine that is at the left of her hand, you can then like start, appreciate it. You can appreciate all the multiple artifacts that are embedded into the painting. And actually this work is on display now at the Gallen-Kallela Museum, and the audience can use this installation to gain information of what is in the painting, as well as to put their comments to the curators about what they have learned or liked or disliked in the exhibition. The next, please. Thank you. So simultaneously, our interest in design and development of digital tools can facilitate knowledge building and exchange towards a sustainable semiosphere. We envision this two-pronged approach. The first stage involves the application of existing technologies and systems to identify the signals in our environment. And in this manner, these technologies would help us to identify beneficial and detrimental signals for organism health, as well as serve as training tools for enhancing human sensing skills as a requisite for knowledge. The second stage is the development of future technology systems and applications that support healthy humans and other organism living environments. Technological development, especially since the Industrial Revolution, has introduced novel signals in our environment that impact signal space in ways that we are now just beginning to understand. And we contend that this constitutes an important design challenge for the future. Investigate and understand the complexity of the signal space, and initiate design paradigms and practices that start from the idea of a sustainable semiosphere and signal space. We could already start the next video. Here I'm going to show an example of an instrument, a simulation that incorporates knowledge across different modalities to provide access to a protected underwater heritage site. Of course, the idea here is that we're seeing this on a screen flat, but this is a three-dimensional space that you navigate, and you are all the time immersed in a 3D sound landscape that we cannot hear very well here. These videos are taken at the site. And this was work that was done at the Media Lab in collaboration with the Board of Antiquities of Finland. The semiosphere indicates the world of meaning and communication. Is forward, I think. Yeah, thank you. Meaning and communication in which each organism occupies a semiotic niche and will have to master a set of signals of visual, acoustic, olfactory, tactile and chemical origin in order to survive in the semiosphere. Whereas social semiotics is concerned with the way people use semiotic resources, both to produce communicative artifacts and events and to interpret them in the context of special social situations and practices. Biosemiotics, as an overarching research agenda, allows for the investigation of myriad forms of communication and signification found in and between living systems. It is the study of representation, meaning, sense, and the biological significance of codes and sign processes, including semiotic artifacts such as language and abstract symbolic thought. It introduces meaning in the discipline of biology and thereby incorporates the study of human behavior across cultures. From a media design perspective, signal space involves the description of human epistemological practices into new constellations of understanding that might even make use of so-called virtual spaces, and the building of tools that allow us access to the new understandings in a methodical way. I would like to think that signal spaces are not inherent to the phenomena under scrutiny. They are knowledge artifacts that come to be by a human invention. Through our practices, interest and affective dispositions in our daily lives, we transverse the fields of influence of diverse communities. Now, I would like to show you one last video, and the idea with this is a work in progress. If in the Brau Maria we were actually constructing a simulation, here in this what we're going to show is actually we're using simulation to deconstruct what is called the canonic painting, the anatomy lesson by Dr. Nicolas Tulp by Rembrandt, 1632. And in our objectives are the being able to actually understand the space, construct perhaps the cognitive attitude of the painter when he brought together these different figures. Some of which, at least if you know the painting, some of which were not actually there when the actual painting took place. As knowledge practices and material culture vary, what remains constant is our body, that we might choose or not to augment through technology. Thank you.
So we have time for 1 or 2 audience questions, maybe 3 even. If we get the lights to work. So while people are pondering their own questions, I have one for you. So the Fromaria virtual reality display was very interesting, and I was wondering, as you know, coming from the more experimental side and the research side, academia, how do you see that those kind of technologies, virtual reality, moving to part of our sort of everyday media culture? Is it already happening in your opinion, or is it something we can expect in the coming years? Like
Totally, it is happening, yeah. In different fields, of course, the one that calls the most attention, of course, is in games, where you have like a lot of work is going on developing new platforms in using this like HTC Vive and Oculus Rift units, etc. But one thing I need to correct about Brown Maria, it is not a display, because what happens there, this is a dynamic system. Anybody, you know, the way that it works is that what you see there is very different from what I see, and it has to do because you're being served information according to actually the shape of your body, you know, where you're moving, how you're looking, and I don't think that, you know, we would explore the space in the same way. So then that brings into question the whole notion of display as we know it, you know, like these. That's one of the reasons why I showed the screen installation at the beginning, which is something, you know, of interest in the future, because now we are starting to see environments in which we are like, you know, completely surrounded by, you know, these type of display systems, yeah. So, yeah. I think that, yeah, there's somebody there that has, no, okay.
Any other questions?
No?
Okay, in that case, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So our next presenter is Martin Lambrechts. He's our first keynote speaker for today. Of course, that distinction is slightly blurred in this kind of conference. But anyway, one of our 2 longer presentations today. Martin is a visual journalist and data journalist from Belgium. I'll let him introduce himself, but I'll just mention that his topic is explorable explanations.
Can you hear me? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I'm Martin. I would like to start to thank Juuso and other organizers for inviting me to come and speak here in Helsinki to this big and interesting crowd. I decided to take the opportunity to talk about something that I think is really powerful, something I really love, and something that is still quite young and not very well known. So this thing is called explorable explanations, as you can see. And I'm going to demonstrate an explorable explanation I made myself, and I'll also show some other examples made by other people. And I hope to introduce this concept of explorable explanations to you by showing examples. I also hope to demonstrate the power of these explorable explanations. And if I could inspire some of you to make their own explorable explanations, then I think this talk would have been a great success. So who is this bearded man talking to you about exploring and explaining? I'm Martin Lambrechts. I come from Belgium. This is a map of my country. It's made up of 20,000 neighborhoods. So it's a map I made, and I work in the darker area in the center, which is Brussels, where neighborhoods are smaller. And I work there at Mediafin. Mediafin is a publisher of 2 newspapers. One is in Flemish, it's called The Tijd, and one is in French, it's called L'Echo, because Belgium is a bilingual country. And I work there as a data and multimedia journalist. So I make maps. And I took this data set of neighborhoods, and I joined it with a data set on real estate prices. And this is an example of a map I made. This is a spread from a magazine we published on real estate. And this is the city of Antwerp, and you can see the richer neighborhoods where house prices are higher. You can see them in blue. The areas where houses are cheaper, you can see them in red. And in this magazine, there were like 7 or 8 of these maps. But of course, when you as a reader are confronted with a map like this, you want to know what's the situation in my own neighborhood. So I don't only make static graphics, I also make interactive ones. I hope this will load. Okay, there we are. So this is the same map with all the Belgian neighborhoods. And I'm just going to look for an address. I first thought I used my own address, but at that time I didn't know this was going to be taped and streamed. So I'm not going to put in my own address. So this is the town I live in. It's called Diest, and the center is here. So you can basically search for any address in Belgium. It will zoom in, and it will tell you if you live in a neighborhood where prices are high or where prices are low. Here we are in the city center, where prices are average. More to the south, you have expensive neighborhoods, and more outside of the center, houses get more expensive. And we can actually look up the map for Antwerp, and then we get the exact same map as was published in the magazine. So that's what I do. I play with data. I try to look for stories in data, and I try to tell stories with data. I do not only make maps, I also make charts, and this is a combination of the two. Once again, this is a map of Belgium, and it shows the level of municipal taxes. So the municipalities where taxes are high are in red, and where taxes are low, those ones are in gray. And those two graphics are connected, so if you hover over one of them, the other one is also responding. And once again, you can find your own municipality. And I happen to live in a municipality which is quite expensive when it comes to municipal taxes. I try to experiment with new ways of visualizing information. This one is a network of all the listed Belgian companies, publicly listed companies. So in this network, every company is a red dot. And all the members of the board of directors are the little dots, and they're colored according to gender. So the blue dots are the women, and the gold dots, they are the men. And the bigger dots are people that are active in multiple companies. So this one here, his name is Luc Bertrand. He is in five boards, so he's active in 5 companies. And I try also to have a story around this with a network that's not very easy. But for example, you can highlight all the companies that don't have any women in their board of directors. So an all-male board. These are the companies that have more than 1/3 of women in their board of directors. And in 1 or 2 years, companies will be obliged to have at least 1/3 of women in the board of directors. So these companies without women, they have a lot of changes to make. So this is a sample of my work. So I make interactive things, and I try to tell stories with them, and that's how I got interested in explorable explanations. And in thinking about, I wanted to make one myself, and I decided to take a topic that was bugging me for a long time. I looked it up on Google Translate, and it happens to be mielipidetutkimmus, which is a really nice word, which, if Google Translate is right, means political polls. I don't know if that's correct. So I was really annoyed by how reporters report on the results of political polls, because they focus on small differences, which are actually meaningless. But in order to explain that, you have to have a sense of statistics, and a lot of journalists just don't have that. So I was looking for a way to explain the uncertainty that goes with political polls, but I wanted to explain it without formulas, so that everybody could understand it. So I'm going to demonstrate my explorable explanation, but on a side note, my wife, she was here 12 years ago. She came back with 2 words. The first one was heipahei, and the second one was korvapusti, and me being a curious journalist, of course, I ran it through Google Translate, and it appears that you named the national pastry a slap in the face, so well done. I really like that. So, this is rock and roll. By the way, I have a lot of examples in my slides, but in the end, I'll give you the URL of my slides so you can look up all the examples yourself. So this is the first one I made myself. And this is set in an imaginary country, and the country is called Poland. And Poland has 1 million inhabitants, and for every 1,000 inhabitants, there's 1 dot on the screen here. And Poland is a democracy, so Polandians go to vote every 4 years. And they don't like to talk about politics a lot, they're a little shy. So right now we have only gray dots. We don't know which dots supports which party in the elections. But of course, when election comes, everyone has to confess their political preferences, and the dots are colored. So as you can see, the political landscape in Poland is really scattered. We have a lot of different colors. It even looks like a painting by some famous painter. Then after elections, votes are counted. So they're first sorted, then counted. And then we end up with the election result. And as you can see, the red party is the biggest one. They have almost 1/3 of the votes. Second comes the purple party, and then blue and green. And these are actually election scores from last election in my home region of Flanders. So it's a bit like a real-life example. So a government is formed. And this new government, they reform taxes, they lower some taxes, they raise other taxes. There might be a political scandal, a minister has to resign. And after 1 year after elections, media are asking themselves, what did this all do with the political preferences in the population? So what they do is they commission a survey with a survey company, and this survey company is going to conduct a political poll. So they are going to call people and ask, if elections were held today, which party would you vote for? So that is what we are going to simulate here. But we're going to assume that nobody in the whole country of Poland changed their mind. So if elections were held today, the election result would be exactly the same as 1 year ago with the real elections. So this polling company, they prepare everything, and they're going to call up the first people for the poll. And this person happens to be a supporter of the red party. So I have 2 bars here. The bar below is election result. The second bar is the result from the polls. And because no one changed their mind, during this year. It means that we should end up with two identical bars. So the election result and the polling result should be exactly the same because no one changed their mind. Right now there is only one vote, but we're going to continue polling, I'm sorry. So the second people in the poll happens to be a purple supporter. And then I provided a lazy button because polling is hard. It should take me 1,000 clicks to get to 1,000 people in the poll. But I have a lazy button, so I can go up to 10 right now. So as you can see, after asking 10 people who they would vote for, in the polling results, half of them supports the red party, which is not really the case in the full population. So in the poll, the red party is overrepresented, and other parties are underrepresented. For example, in the first 10 people we called up, there ended up being not a single supporter for the blue party. So what we're going to do now is stress the differences between the polling results and the election results. So as you can see, red is very overrepresented and blue is very underrepresented. So what do we need to do to make the poll better? Of course, we need to poll more people. So we're going to continue calling people, asking them who they would vote for. Right now, I have a button to add 10 at once. Or I can, once again, use the lazy button. And right now, the lazy button is going to take me up to 100. So I'm going to click the button, and I would ask you to keep track of the changes in the bar graph that shows the differences. So as you've seen, the bars have shrunk. The differences between polling result and election results were getting smaller, and that's the whole concept of polling. If you poll more people, your results become more reliable. Because what we actually want is that these bars over here, that they disappear completely, because we don't want any differences between the polling results and the actual preferences among the total population. So in the next step, we are going to go up to 1,000 people, and 1,000 is a very common sample size for political polls and for other polls as well. And so, for example, in my home region of Flanders, political polls always have around 1,000 people in them, usually a little more, but 1,000 is a real-life sample size. So I can keep on adding hundreds at the time, but I'm going to get to 1,000 with the lazy button. And you see the differences are getting smaller and smaller. But after 1,000 people polled, we still have differences between the polling results and the election results. And these differences are the result of just pure chance. They are random. And they are the result of the sample being random, and with the randomness come some form of variation. And in this poll, we happen to call up a little more people supporting red party and a little less people supporting the purple party. So actually, this is quite a big difference, 2.3 percentage points. I guess if a survey company would step to a journalist, report this, a race with 2.3 percentage points, I think some journalists would immediately write an article with the headline, "Red Party is growing," while in reality there is nothing there. This is just a result of pure randomness. So polls are only polls. The polls are no elections. You shouldn't treat poll results as election results, because in polling results there is some kind of uncertainty. And to show that, I'm going to take this one step further, and instead of conducting one survey, we're going to do 8 polls at the same time. So 8 polls in the same population at the same time with the same methodology. So they should end up all with the same results. So this is the first one, second, third, fourth. So these are 8 times 1,000 people in the poll, so 8,000 people polled. And as you can see, one party can be underrepresented in one poll and overrepresented in another poll. Maybe we can sort them together. And now you can see, for example, blue party is a good example. In one poll, they are overrepresented by 2.5 percentage points. In another, they are underrepresented by 1.2 percentage points. So there is a range in which the score, the polling result, can vary for every party. And this is due to the randomness that goes with polling. And I think a lot of journalists don't take this into account, and they focus on small differences, while in reality, the small differences are just a result of random noise. For example, if we count the number of times that the poll was exactly right, so the difference was equal to 0, they are none. There are 64 polling scores here, and there's not a single one that's exactly right. 2 times the deviation was bigger than 2 percentage points, so that's over here for blue, and the other one is over here with the yellow one here. So the message is don't focus on small differences, and even bigger differences can also be totally due to randomness, to random variation. So this was Rock and Poll. I hope you were able to follow me along and that you have a bit of an idea of how polling works and why you should treat polling results with a grain of salt. And maybe next time if you read about the polling results in the newspaper, think back to this interactive presentation and yeah, be careful with interpreting the results from political polls. So what lessons do I want you to take from all this? As I told you, be careful with interpreting polling results. And I think there are quite some designers in the room, and I think there are also people who visualize data. There are techniques for visualizing uncertainty, and I think we as a designer, or as someone who visualizes data, we have a duty to visualize this uncertainty. And there are some techniques we can use to show uncertainty. And in the last slide of Rock and Poll, there are some links to examples. So if you're confronted with some things that have some kind of uncertainty in them, you can go to these links to go for some inspiration. But what I want you to take with you above everything else is that explorable explanations, as Rock and Poll is, can be really powerful. So I explained some quite hard statistics just by showing you visual things that move around the screen. I didn't use any formulas. So that is the real power of explorable explanations. And the power comes from 3 things. And the first one is visualization. And I don't think I have to convince any of you that visualizing things can be really powerful. And the second one is interaction. If you give control to the user and to the reader, let him explore and change things. And if you then give feedback, mostly in visual form, then the user can see the consequences of his actions, and in that way he can understand much better what's going on, how things relate to each other. So visualization and interaction put together is really, really powerful. And the third thing is animation, because we just like to look at moving things on screens, and animations make it playful. And I think it's very important that when you want people to learn something new, they should forget or they shouldn't notice that they're learning, and animation can help with that. If you make it playful or you make it a bit like a game, people will forget they're learning, and they will just start playing, and in the end, the result will be that they've learned something new without knowing they were learning. Okay. It wasn't me who invented explorable explanations, and I think a lot of people way back already saw the power of visualization and interaction, but it wasn't until some 5 years ago when Brett Victor wrote an essay about explorable explanations that things really took off. Brett Victor used to be a human-computer interaction designer at Apple, and he publishes very interesting articles, and he gives very interesting talks, and one of these articles was on explorable explanations. So in this article, he talks about reactive documents, and what reactive documents are documents where you give controls to the user and you give feedback for what the user is changing. Just for example, this is a text with a lot of numbers in them, and you can drag the numbers, and all the other numbers in the text, they change accordingly. Or you can change values, and then all the other text updates as well. So these are reactive documents. And the other thing are explorable examples, and this is exactly what I am talking about. So you have here a diagram depicting how an audio filter works. I don't really understand all this, but it gives the user control to change things, and all the numbers in the diagram change, the graphics change. So everything is related to the control, and you give the user the power to change the things the way you want them to. And the great thing about this, this is actually a diagram of an audio filter, and Brett Victor made it also that you can hear the audio. I don't know if this is going to work here on stage. So you actually don't have only visual feedback, but also audio feedback. You can directly hear, for what you change, what this means for the actual audio output. So this is, yeah, I think it's a very, very good example of explorable explanation. So what I'm going to do for the rest of my talk is show you other examples. I will not be able to treat every example in depth because we don't have that much time, but I hope to give you an idea of what is out there and what is possible, and yeah, to inspire you basically. So rock and roll was all about stats. Let's continue with statistics a little bit more. This is called the central limit theorem, and this is actually a very important principle in statistics. And this could have been a rock and roll too, or the second chapter to rock and roll, because it builds further upon what I did with rock and roll. You have a population and you can take samples out of that population. That's also what I did with rock and roll. So you can take samples and you see the mean of the sample, for example. Or you can consider multiple samples, and that's what I did at the end of rock and roll with the 8 political polls put next to each other. And it goes on, and then it's showing you some distributions. And this is actually the lazy button. You only have to click once and then the animation starts. So if you're interested in understanding this part of statistics, I think there's no better way than doing it this way. This is an example of an explorable explanation that's actually very small. It doesn't have to be a lot of text with a lot of interactive things. This is just some explanation, and then the user gets some controls, and we have an animated visualization. It's about conditional probability, which means that if you have something that could happen with probability A and something else with the probability B, and you know the probability that they both happen at the same time, then you can simply visualize all these probabilities. So you can change the red and the blue bars, and you can also set the chance that they would happen together. So by moving the bars, you adjust where these little dots can fall, and when they fall at random locations. They change color. If they fall onto the blue bar, they get a blue color. If they fall on the red bar, they get a red color. And if they fall on both bars, they get a purple color. And you see what is expected, the proportions for every color, and you also see what's actually happening. And you have some counters here down on the screen. So explorable explanations don't have to be really big interactives. They can be really small and also and still be very effective. Then we go on to mathematics, and I think this is a really important example. It is called Matigan, and it's kind of the textbook of the future, I think. So it's an interactive textbook explaining mathematics. I'm just going to show you some examples. So this is really simple. Something that explains how the three angles in a triangle always sum up to 180 degrees. So you can drag these things around, and you can see the values below updating. You also see what the largest angle is. Of course, if you don't know how triangles work, it could be interesting to find how can I maximize this value? How can I make the biggest angle possible? Of course, you do that by dragging this dot just onto the line, and then you see that it's 180, and the other two angles are 0. So this is meant to be a real textbook, so once in a while it asks you a question, and you're supposed to answer those questions. So it asks me what the sum of the angles in the triangle is. It's 180, and then we can continue. It explains a little bit more. I'm going to skip this one. You see, this is still work in progress, but it's really, nice concept. And then it goes one step further, and this is also something very important in explorable explanations, that you explain step by step. You explain something very small, and then you build on that in the second step, then you explain something else, and then in the end you can combine everything into the finale, and then it all comes together, and hopefully the user will get it then in the end. I'm going to show you what's more on this page. I'm going to show you all. So it's about triangles, quadrilaterals, and you have some interactives to play with, and it asks you questions. Some things are really, really nice, as you can see. Some animations are in there for clarity, as you can see. So I think this is how a textbook of the future will look like. And this is already the second version of Matigan. So they're now still updating all the chapters, and it's actually quite big. And I really believe in explaining things interactively, and this is just a very good example. This is an explanation of how fractals work. I don't know if everybody here knows what fractals are. They're really interesting shapes, mathematically generated and mostly really beautiful. And this is an article that explains how you can produce those nice fractals. And it's not really interactive. The only thing you can do is go through the explanation step by step. So it's animated and visual, but as a user, the only thing you can do is clicking the arrows. But I think it's still a nice explanation. And I'm going to show you this one. So this is actually how fractals are generated, explained visually. You can check all the details later if you want. I just want to show you what the end result is, and then I think you'll recognize what a fractal is. So this is the end result, and I think many of you have seen those kind of interesting shapes. So if you'd like to know the mathematics behind that, you can check this one out. We go to physics, and this is actually another example of a textbook of the future. It's a very large explanation about circles, signs, and signals. So it's about waves, basically. Some very advanced math, actually, but told in a way, in steps, starting really simple and always explained visually, and a lot of it is interactive. So, for example, this is an example where you can adjust some parameters, and you can immediately see the consequences of what you're changing. And it gets quite complicated. And this was actually something I really never understood quite well. Even at university, I didn't understand it very well. But after reading this and playing with this, it all came together. It just, for me, it showed the real power of exploring explorable explanations. So as you can see, some controls and visual feedback and nice explanation altogether. I don't know if you ever wondered why a block of ice melts this way, but it never freezes this way. So there's a physical phenomenon, it's called entropy, and it's quite hard to understand. It's a bit counterintuitive, and this explorable explanations explains entropy with sheep. So also very playful. It has to do with arranging a number of sheep on a number of fields. So you have some controls here. And there's one more over here, I think, with some sliders. It's over here. So after reading this, I think you'll understand why a block of ice never melts the way as shown above. It's a very funny piece, actually. And the last one for physics, I'm sure you have all seen the thing there. When you tilt it, you get another image or other colors. This actually explains how that works. So you have a ray of light coming through a lens, and then you have two separate colors, and depending on the angle, you get back another color. So you can adjust a lot of these things, and you can see what's happening there. So once again, very small, interactive, explorable, but very effective. Biology. This is also really well done. This is about critters, and the critters have different colors. And they create new critters, and critters inherit the color of their parents. And most of them inherit the colors their parents have, but some get other colors, like we humans sometimes get some things our parents don't have. And These critters, they live in a world where there's a predator, and the predator is called the beastie, and the beastie comes out at night and eats the critters. And what this actually explains is evolution and survival of the fittest. Because they have all different colors, and at night, some colors are more visible than others. And you as a user, you have to click on the critters. So now it's night, I have to click the critters, and then the beast comes out and eats them. But some colors are more visible than others. So for example, the pink ones, I can see quite clearly here. But the blue and green ones, I don't see very well. It's a lot of clicking, a bit too much for me. But as you can see now, I didn't get those two green ones because they were not very visible. And if you play this game for a couple of nights, you'll see that all the pink ones are gone, and you end up with only the green ones. And this is what evolution and survival of the fittest is all about. So this, it's a game, actually, explains evolution. So yeah, it's a brilliant example, although you have to click a lot of times. I'm running a bit out of time. Let's see, maybe this one. This is actually an iPad app. So it's not online, it's an iPad app you can install. You have to pay for it, but it's actually really, really good. It explains how geology works. Mountains, you can raise or lower sea levels, you can raise or lower the temperature, and you can see what that would mean for an imaginary world. You also have wind, if it freezes you get glaciers, so a lot of geological processes are explained visually, and you can interact with them, see what happens if you, for example, lower the sea level or raise the temperature. Okay, maybe the last one. So I think as being designers, you might have used Bezier curves in Illustrator, for example. So the things you can pull, and then the lines you draw, they change shape. This is actually an interactive explanation on how these Bezier curves work. And you can see, you can pull them. You can adjust them a little bit, and this article explains actually how those work. So if you're interested in how those things you're pulling in Illustrator work, I recommend this article. And there are also some more. This one is the same concept, but for animations. This one explains SVG paths. So all the numbers you see when you open a raw SVG in a text editor explains this really well. And there's also one that explains filters, for example, in Photoshop. All the different filters, they have different calculations for every pixel, and this one explains that really well. So what it all boils down to for explorable explanation is this. Nothing beats good old-fashioned poking around. So let the user play with controls and let him see what he's changing, what consequences that has. That is the way not only kittens learn, but also babies and children. Children play for learning, and I think we have forgotten that a bit, and I think also we as grown-ups, we should be playing with things to learn new things, and this can also apply to very complicated systems and processes. So this is my plea to make more explorable explanations, because they're very intuitive and very powerful. So changing stuff and see what happens. Here is an article if you would like to build your own explorable explanation that give you some guidelines. So, for example, the step-by-step thing is explained here. These are very loose guidelines, but if you think of making one, you can go there. There is a website where we collect some examples, not very much for now, but we're hoping to expand this website. And there's also a Twitter account where we collect examples. So if you know any good examples, you can tweet them to me, and I'll make sure they are tweeted by this explorable explanation. So this is the URL where you can find these slides with all the links to all the examples. There are a lot of examples I didn't even show you. So if you like explorable explanations, you can check the slides here. There's also my website and my Twitter account, and that's basically it. So thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you, Martin. Very interesting presentation. I'm sure we have questions. So do you have the mic there? So just put your hand up and you'll get the mic.
Hi. Have you seen any examples of explorable explanations in a virtual reality, or kind of does it become like science museum thing then, or what's kind of?
I don't know any in virtual reality. No, could be interesting, but I think it's still so young that we still have to make the first steps just in 2D, and maybe then we can think about going 3D. But it's an interesting idea.
Next question.
I'll stick in a question. One thing that's maybe like strikes me as a challenge with explorable explanations, having been involved in making not one but 3 geography textbooks, is that in the traditional sense the amount of work is massive and it's not very well paid necessarily as from the design perspective. And of course, because these are, with the current tools, they're basically going from what is an illustration project into software development, but the user expects a similar level of graphical finesse maybe from them as well. So do you see that there's a solution of getting more explorable explanations out in the wild, like in kids' maths books and so on, that don't involve having like 500% more work resources allocated to these projects?
Well, you may have seen that my style for rock and roll is really basic, just circles and some primary colors. And that's part of because I'm not a drawing person. I don't know how to draw. So all these shapes are created in code, and they're very basic. And I guess if you have a textbook with a lot of nice illustrations, translating that to an explorable explanation environment, it's quite hard. And also the Earth primer, if you look at the graphics, they're actually also quite basic. They're not very fine-grained or very high detail. So I think I think that's also the reason why, for example, there are a lot of explorable explanations for statistics and mathematics, because they have, you can use abstract shapes. They can be very basic. And for things like geography or biology, things get a little bit more complicated. When you have to have some level of abstraction. For example, the critters, they're not real animals. You don't have to draw real animals. They're just circles with eyes, basically. So if you can make it a little bit more abstract, the visual things, then it can work. Otherwise, it's harder, I guess.
Okay, other questions? There's one at the back. So you'll get the microphone.
Hi, I have a very practical question. What kind of language do you use for coding when you make these interactions?
It's in JavaScript, and I use D3. It's a library for working with data and binding data to visual shapes. So I think if you're interested in making these things, learn some JavaScript and then learn D3. There is one other JavaScript library that's also often used. It's called p5.js, I think. I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay.
So P5 is, if you know what processing is, so P5 is implementation of processing for JavaScript, and it's probably a lot easier to learn than D3 if you start from zero. So if you have no coding experience or very little, it might be easier to start with that. More questions?
Hi, there's been two kind of views on interactivity, especially on news. Like Jussi Tuulensu here said that no interactivity at all. People are lazy, they just want to scroll down. And all these explorable explanations have been really interactive. You have to do, try, click and slide. What's your take on this?
You have to make it as playful as possible. You have to make it look like a game, and then people will interact. And I also was a bit worried, because if you play rock and roll from start to finish, you have to click at least 33 times. And that's a lot. So I tracked how far people got into the thing. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was like 60% that went from start to finish. So that's actually very high. So I think if people are interested in it and you can make it playful enough, then it could work. But of course you have to, you have to design your the interface in a way that the user, shouldn't be doing unnecessary things. I try to optimize everything as well. I tried the scroller first. But it was very hard to execute, so in the end I said I'm not going to make a scroller, I'm going to do it in steps and with clicks. But it appears to be working.
Okay, more questions? While we wait for another question, there's one at the back. I could just add here, but there at the back corner. I could add a comment here, which is that I think what Jussi Tuulensu from Aamulehti mentioned in the morning, that don't use interaction, is for a very different sort of mode of communication than what you are talking about. So what you showed is more for learning, and then for daily news cycle, you know, this sort of quick churn of something that you read and then you forget in a couple of days. It's probably different that people are willing to invest their time and effort for something that they really want to learn. So that also plays a part here.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering when I was looking at this, when you're designing your explorable explanations, do you think about special groups like dyslexic people or visually impaired people? Or is it this for people who can read and see?
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand the question.
Because when you're designing your explorable explanations, are they designed for people who can see and read? So if you're dyslexic or you're visually impaired, can you still use this? Or
To be honest, I never thought of that. I think it's very hard to make something that people who are visually impaired, I think it's really hard. I do pay attention to things like color blindness most of the time, but doing these interactives, it's already hard. And then thinking of this extra audience, I think, I don't know if it's possible. And I don't know that anybody who's making interactive explorables has really thought of this. But it's a good suggestion, but I don't think, I think it's very hard.
More questions? We have maybe time for one or two, if you have them. If not, then thank you, Martin. And we'll have a 25-minute break. There's some coffee served there, which I'm sure will be welcomed by many of you. And let's continue at 1:55.